Ukraine and Russia. A thousand-year struggle. Why has Ukraine become the center of one of the world's most dangerous standoffs? The answer isn't just found in today's headlines, it's buried deep in 1,000 years of tangled history. The relationship between Ukraine and Russia is more than a matter of borders or politics. It's a complex story of identity, memory, and power that has shaped both nations for centuries. Ancient roots and shared beginnings. Before the world knew the names Ukraine or Russia, the lands around Kyiv were the heart of a powerful civilization called Kievan Rus. Norse traders settled here, merging with local tribes and laying the foundation for a new society. Both modern Russians and Ukrainians look back to this era as the birthplace of their nations. And this shared heritage remains a source of both pride and conflict. Mongol invasions and shifting powers. In the 13th century, the Mongol horde swept through Kievan Rus, shattering the old order. Ukraine's lands were divided, sometimes under Lithuanian or Polish rule, while Moscow rose as a new center of power. These centuries of shifting borders and divided loyalties planted the seeds for future conflict, making Ukraine a crossroads of cultures and ambitions. Cossacks, treaties, and Russian expansion. By the 17th century, the fiercely independent Cossacks emerged as a symbol of Ukrainian resistance. In 1654, they pledged allegiance to the Russian Tsar, hoping for protection but ultimately losing much of their autonomy. Meanwhile, Russia annexed Crimea, setting a precedent for future disputes. The region's identity became a battleground for competing empires, and the dream of independence was slowly crushed, but never fully extinguished. Suppression and identity struggles. In the 19th century, the Russian Empire tried to erase Ukrainian identity, banning the language and labeling Ukrainians as Little Russians. The harder the authorities pushed, the more determined the people became to preserve their culture. The Crimean War exposed Russia's weaknesses, but for Ukraine, it only deepened the sense of being caught between worlds. Never fully Russian, yet denied the right to be fully Ukrainian. Soviet era, famine, war, and tragedy. The 20th century brought new horrors. Under Soviet rule, Ukraine suffered the Holodomor, a man-made famine that killed millions. World War II turned Ukraine into a battlefield, with millions more lost to violence and starvation. The Chernobyl disaster in 1986 shattered trust in the Soviet system and helped hasten its collapse. Through it all, the desire for independence only grew stronger. Independence and new tensions. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Ukraine finally declared independence. Over 90% of voters supported sovereignty, and the world watched as a new nation was born. But challenges quickly followed. Ukraine gave up its nuclear arsenal in exchange for security guarantees, only to find those promises tested in the years ahead. The Orange Revolution and the Maidan protests showed the world that Ukrainians were willing to fight for democracy and a future closer to Europe. Crimea, war, and the modern crisis. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea and backed separatists in eastern Ukraine, igniting a war that continues to this day. Ukraine's push toward the European Union and NATO only deepened Moscow's fears of losing influence. The struggle for Crimea and the Donbas region became symbols of a much larger battle, not just for territory, but for the right to choose a future free from outside domination. Full-scale invasion and global shockwaves. Everything changed in February 2022, when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The world watched in horror as cities were bombed, millions fled, and the global order was shaken. Western nations imposed harsh sanctions on Russia and sent military aid to Ukraine. The war sent shockwaves through global food and energy markets, and the refugee crisis became the largest in Europe since World War II. Allegations of war crimes and atrocities fueled international outrage, while the fighting exposed deep divisions within Russia itself. Speculation, rumors, and the uncertain future. As the conflict drags on, rumors swirl about the health of Russia's leadership, internal dissent, and the possibility of further escalation. Ukrainian counteroffensives, drone strikes, and shifting front lines keep the world on edge. The war's impact is felt far beyond the battlefield. Grain shortages threaten food security worldwide. Energy prices remain volatile, and millions of lives have been upended. Despite talk of secret negotiations and possible peace deals, a lasting solution remains out of reach. Conclusion: the story of Ukraine and Russia is not just about two countries. It's a lesson for the world about how deep the wounds of history can run. Today, Ukraine stands as a symbol of resilience, fighting for its identity and its right to exist. Russia, meanwhile, is haunted by its own past. torn between nostalgia for lost glory and the realities of a changing world. The outcome of this struggle will echo for generations, shaping not just the fate of these two nations, but the future of the entire world. Can old wounds ever truly heal, or are we destined to repeat the mistakes of the past? The answer remains uncertain, and the world is watching, waiting to see what comes next.